Ambassador Kelthan stretched his long fingers across the holographic display, watching the small blue planet rotate slowly in front of the Galactic Council. The humans living on this world called it Earth, and to him, they looked like nothing more than curious children playing with dangerous toys. "Look at this," he said, pointing to images of human spacecraft. "They still burn chemicals to move through space. Their weapons shoot pieces of metal at each other. My personal transport ship has better technology than their entire military." Other council members leaned forward to examine the data. The reptilian star representative hissed with amusement. How did such a primitive species even discover space travel? "Luck, probably," Kelthan replied with a dismissive wave. "They stumbled into it by accident. These humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years over patches of dirt and shiny rocks. They cannot possibly understand what real warfare looks like." Back on Earth, Captain Hyenwoo Park stood in the command center of the Seoul Defense Station, watching the incoming transmission with his arms crossed. The alien message appeared in perfect Korean, which should have been impossible since humanity had never made contact with alien species before. "Greetings, primitive humans," the message began. "We are the Vorthok Empire. You will surrender your planet within 72 hours and provide tribute of 1 million of your people for labor purposes. Resistance will result in complete annihilation." Hyenwoo's jaw tightened as he read the demands. Around him, other officers muttered angrily at the arrogant tone of the message. Communication Officer Sojin Lee looked up from her station with fire in her eyes. "Sir, they're treating us like we're some kind of livestock," she said. "They want to take our people as slaves." "I can see that," Hyenwoo replied calmly. He walked to the main communication terminal and began typing humanity's response. His fingers moved steadily across the keyboard, each word chosen carefully. The message he sent back was short and polite. "Thank you for your communication. We must respectfully decline your offer. We hope you understand your offer. We hope you understand. Our position? Earth will remain under human control. 300 kilometers away, hidden beneath the rocky surface of the moon." Admiral Mina Kim watched the transmission being sent from her secret command post. The lunar facility had been built in complete secrecy over the past 15 years, disguised as a mining operation. "They actually think we're going to just hand over our planet," she said to her aide, Colonel Jinho Choi. "They send one message and expect us to surrender everything our ancestors built." "Should we tell them about the lunar installations?" Ginho asked, gesturing to the massive weapons arrays hidden in the moon's craters. Min Dasha shook her head. "Let them keep thinking we're helpless. The longer they underestimate us, the better our chances become. They see our old rockets and metal bullets, but they don't see what we've been building in secret." When humanity's response reached the Vorthok fleet, the entire council chamber erupted in shocked laughter. Ambassador Kelthan read the message aloud 3 times, each reading causing more amusement among the assembled aliens. "Did they just say no?" asked the crystalline Zethkar representative. "A primitive species with chemical rockets just refused the might of the Vorthok Empire? They must not understand what we're capable of," another council member suggested. "Perhaps we should send them recordings of our previous conquests to help them reconsider." Kelthan waved his hand dismissively. "No need. They will learn soon. Enough. Ready the fleet for immediate departure. 1,000 ships should be more than sufficient to deal with these stubborn humans." The Vorthok had conquered 17 different star systems over the past century. Each time, the native species had either surrendered immediately or been crushed within days. Their advanced energy weapons, force fields, and faster-than-light travel had made them virtually unstoppable. "How long do you think it will take?" asked the star representative. 3 days at most, Kelthan replied confidently. "Probably. Less these humans have never faced real warfare before. They fight among themselves with primitive weapons, but they've never encountered a truly advanced civilization." What the Vorthok Council didn't understand was that humanity's constant fighting had taught them something valuable. Every war, every conflict, every battle had been a lesson in survival. Humans had learned to adapt, to innovate, and to never give up even when facing impossible odds. The greatest mistake the aliens made was assuming that primitive technology meant primitive thinking. They would soon discover that human creativity and determination could be far more dangerous than any advanced weapon. The human exploration ship. Persistence drifted quietly through the void nebula, its sensors scanning the swirling clouds of gas and dust for any signs of the missing vessels. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge, watching the strange colors dance across the view screen. The nebula was beautiful, but deadly, hiding secrets that had claimed 17 ships before them. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual readings," reported Navigation Officer Park Soo-jin from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, trying to make sense of the data. "There's something big out there, but the nebula is making it hard to get a clear picture." Lee nodded and moved closer to her station. "Keep scanning. We need to know what happened to those ships." Suddenly, the peaceful silence was shattered. Dark shapes burst from the nebula like nightmares coming to life. The Jector warships moved with deadly grace, their black holes gleaming with an oily sheen. They had been waiting, hidden in the nebula's depths, patient as spiders in their web. Contact. Multiple ships decloaking. Tahoe, his hands flying over his weapons console. "They're targeting us!" Lee's training kicked in instantly. "All stop. Shields up. Red alert." His voice cut through the sudden chaos as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The first volley of plasma fire lit up the space around them like deadly fireworks. The Persistence rocked violently as the energy bolts struck their shields. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and the lights flickered ominously. "Return fire," Lee ordered, gripping his command chair as another wave of plasma bolts hammered their defenses. But the Jectar had planned this ambush perfectly. They had superior numbers, better weapons, and the element of surprise. The human ship's shields collapsed under the relentless assault, and the hull began to buckle under the punishment. Chief Engineer Yoon. Dahai's voice crackled over the communication system from the engine room, barely audible over the sound of failing systems. "Captain, we're in serious trouble down here. Power is dropping on all decks. We've got hull breaches on levels 3 and 7, and the main reactor is running dangerously hot." Lee could hear the desperation in her voice, though she tried to hide it. The Persistence was dying around them, and they all knew it. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in an eerie red glow as the main power systems failed one by one.
Ow.
"Long do we have?" Lee asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Maybe 30 minutes before life support fails completely," Yoon replied. "The hull breaches are getting worse, and I can't stop all the leaks with the power we have left." On the lead Jector ship, Commander Vexith watched the crippled human vessel with cold satisfaction. His species had been hunting humans for months, studying them, learning their weaknesses. These particular humans had walked right into his trap. "Cease fire," he commanded his weapons officer. "The ship is disabled. Prepare the boarding parties and tell the science cast to ready their laboratories. We finally have live human specimens to study." The Jectar had heard rumors about human resilience, but Vexith dismissed them as exaggerations. How tough could a species be when they died so easily in the vacuum of space? Back on the Persistence, Medical Officer Choi Mina moved through the damaged corridors with practiced efficiency. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls as she tended to the wounded crew members. Her medical bag was running. Low on supplies, but she worked without complaint. "Captain, I've got 17 injured crew members," she reported over her communicator, checking on an unconscious engineer. 4 of them are in critical condition and need immediate evacuation to a proper medical facility." Her voice remained steady and professional, despite the chaos around them. Smoke filled the air from damaged electrical systems, and the deck plating was buckled from the plasma impacts. Lee's response came immediately, his voice filled with determination that surprised even himself. "We're not dead yet, Mina. Keep them alive. We're going to find a way out of this." But as he looked around the damaged bridge, watching his crew work frantically to save their ship, Lee wondered if his confidence was misplaced. The Jectar ships surrounded them like predators circling wounded prey. An escape seemed impossible. The Jectar ships moved closer to the crippled Persistence. their boarding tubes extending like mechanical tentacles ready to pierce the human vessel's hull. Commander Vexith expected the humans to huddle together in fear, waiting for capture or death. Instead, he watched something that made no sense to his logical mind. The humans were tearing their own ship apart. "What are they doing?" he asked his tactical officer, staring at the scanner readings in confusion. "Their vessel is already destroyed. Why are they causing more damage?" On the Persistence weapons officer, Zhang Haiyanwu crawled through a damaged maintenance shaft, his hands bloody from working with sharp metal edges. Behind him, 2 crew members dragged heavy equipment through the narrow space. "Get those mining laser assemblies to Deck 5, he ordered, his voice echoing in the cramped tunnel. "We're going to give our visitors a warm welcome they'll never forget." The mining lasers weren't designed for combat. They were meant to cut through asteroids and extract valuable minerals. But Haiyanwu knew that anything powerful enough to slice through solid rock could also slice through alien armor. "Sir, these things take forever to charge up," complained engineer-technician Park Dongmin as he helped move the heavy equipment. "By the time we get them ready, they'll already be inside the ship." "Then we'll just have to be creative," Hyunwoo replied with a grim smile. "We don't need to charge them fully. Even a partial blast will surprise them." Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Yoon Dae-hai worked in the damaged engine room with her remaining team members. Sparks flew from broken power conduits as she welded pieces of hull plating together, creating crude but effective armor barriers. "If we can't fix the life support system, we'll turn it into a weapon," she announced to her team, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Help me reroute these atmospheric processors." Her plan was desperate but clever. The ship's damaged life support system was leaking various gases throughout the vessel. Instead of trying to stop the leaks, she would control them, turning the ship's own atmosphere into a toxic trap for the boarding parties. "Yoon, are you sure about this?" asked Assistant Engineer Kim Jae-soon, watching her work with growing concern. "If we mess this up, we'll poison ourselves too. We're dead anyway if we don't try," she replied, connecting a series of emergency valves to the ship's internal communication system. "At least this way, we go down fighting." The Jektar commander continued watching the human ship through his sensors, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans were moving throughout their vessel with purpose, but their actions seemed completely illogical. "They're redistributing their remaining power," reported his science officer. "But not to weapons or shields. They're routing it to mining equipment and atmospheric systems." "Perhaps they're trying to repair their ship for escape," suggested the tactical officer. Vexith shook his head slowly. "No, they're preparing for something else, something we haven't seen before." On Deck 7 of the Persistence, Communications Officer Oh Young-mi sat surrounded by damaged equipment, working frantically to restore contact with the scattered crew sections. Her communication station had been destroyed in the attack, so she had built a new one from spare parts and emergency equipment. "All teams, this is Young-mi," she broadcast on the ship's internal frequency. "I'm establishing a new command center in Cargo Bay 2. If you can hear this, make your way there when possible." Her voice carried through the damaged corridors, reaching crew members who had been isolated since the attack. Slowly, small groups began moving through the ship, avoiding the worst damage areas and gathering in the makeshift command center. "We're turning this cargo bay into our new bridge," she continued, watching as crew members arrived with whatever equipment they could carry. "If the aliens want our ship, they're going to have to earn it." The cargo bay had been mostly empty when the attack began, but now it filled with salvaged equipment and determined crew members. They set up monitoring stations using portable computers, created weapon stations from mining tools, HFY Selentic Prowies, and established medical areas using emergency supplies. The security chief Kim Tae-ho arrived with a group of crew members. "Jung-mi, we've got 17 people ready to fight, but our weapons are limited." "Then we'll make new ones," she replied, pointing to the mining equipment scattered around the bay. "We have welding torches, cutting tools, and enough spare parts to build whatever we need." The Jektar had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy, but they had never encountered prey that transformed their own destruction into an opportunity for resistance. As their boarding tubes finally connected with the human ship, they had no idea what waited for them inside. The humans of the Persistence were about to teach them that Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose. The third day of the siege began with the Persistence looking like a ghost ship drifting through space. Emergency power flickered weakly throughout the damaged corridors, and the air grew thinner with each passing hour. The Jektar boarding parties had attempted 3 separate invasions, each one repelled by the determined human crew using their improvised weapons and deadly traps. Commander Vexith stood in his command center, studying the tactical displays. With growing frustration, his species had conquered 17 different worlds, and never before had they encountered such stubborn resistance from a clearly defeated enemy. "Sir, their life support systems are failing," reported his tactical officer. "Atmospheric readings showed dangerous levels of carbon dioxide building up inside their vessel. They should surrender within hours." "That's what you said yesterday," Vexith replied coldly. "And the day before that? Yet they continue fighting." Inside the makeshift command center of the Persistence, Supply Officer Han, Co. Jun carefully counted the remaining food rations. Emergency supplies were nearly exhausted, reduced to a handful of protein bars and water purification tablets. Around him, 37 crew members watched quietly as he divided the meager provisions. "Everyone gets an equal share," Han announced, breaking each protein bar into smaller pieces. "Officers, enlisted crew, everyone gets the same amount." Pilot Nam Ji-hoon looked up from his injured position against the wall, leg had been broken during the second boarding attempt, but he still insisted on contributing to the defense efforts. "Sir, you need to maintain your strength for command decisions. Take a larger portion." Han shook his head firmly, handing Nam his small piece of food. "We all need strength, Ji-hoon. We survive together or not at all. That's what makes us human." The Jektar had been monitoring human communications since the siege began, trying to understand their enemy's psychology. What they heard confused their military minds. Instead of panic and desperation, they heard something else entirely. "Deck 7 team, how are you holding up?" came Captain Lee's voice over the communication. "System. We're managing, sir," replied Engineer Yoon from her position near the damaged reactor. "Lost 2 more power conduits, but we've rigged a bypass system. We can hold our position." "Good. Remember, if the situation becomes impossible, fall back to the cargo bay. We leave no one behind." On his ship, Vexith's communication officer translated the conversation for his commander. They're discussing retreat options, but they refuse to abandon their wounded. Logic suggests they should leave the injured behind to improve their chances of survival. Yet they won't, Vexith observed, studying the human behavior patterns. They carry their wounded even when it slows them down. They share their food even when supplies are critically low. This makes no tactical sense. Back on the Persistence, Security Chief Kim Tae-ho limped through the corridors, with his left arm hanging uselessly at his side. The arm had been broken during hand-to-hand combat with Jektar soldiers, but he refused to rest while his crew needed leadership. "Team leaders, listen carefully," he transmitted to the scattered defense groups. "The aliens will try another boarding attempt soon. Remember our training, no one gets left behind. If you see a crew member in trouble, you help them. That's not negotiable." Medical Officer Choi Mina had transformed a storage closet into an emergency medical station. With limited supplies and no proper equipment, she worked miracles keeping the wounded crew members alive. Her hands moved steadily as she cleaned a laser burn on Communications Officer Oh Jung-mi's shoulder. "How are our supplies holding up?" Jung-mi asked, wincing as the antiseptic touched her wound. "We're making do," Mina replied, though they both knew the truth. Medical supplies were almost gone, and several crew members needed treatment that she couldn't provide with improvised tools. "The important thing is that we're still fighting," Jung-mi said, testing her shoulder movement. "As long as we're alive, we have a chance." The Jektar commander watched the human ship through his sensors, trying to understand what he was seeing. By all logical calculations, the humans should have surrendered by now. Their ship was destroyed, their supplies were gone, and their weapons were improvised junk. Yet somehow, they continued to resist. "Commander, I don't understand their behavior," admitted his science officer. "They're acting like they expect to win this battle. But how can they win? They're trapped, outnumbered, and running out of time." Vexith studied the tactical display more carefully, noting the human movement patterns and communication frequencies. Slowly, a disturbing realization began to form in his mind. "They're not behaving like a defeated species," he said quietly. "They're behaving like they actually believe they can win this fight." The thought sent a chill through the Jektar command crew. How could a primitive species maintain such confidence in the face of certain death? What did these humans know that they didn't? Deep in the bowels of the Persistence, Chief Engineer Yundahai worked by the light of a flickering emergency lamp. Her hands were covered in cuts from handling sharp metal fragments, and her uniform was stained with coolant fluid and her own blood. Around her, the engine room looked like a battlefield, with damaged conduits sparking and broken pipes leaking. "Steam. Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," she muttered, connecting to salvaged power cells to the main distribution grid. "Just give me enough juice to get communications working." For 3 days, she had been performing miracles with nothing but spare parts and determination. The main reactor was dead, the backup generators were destroyed, and the emergency power was failing. But Yoon refused to give up. She had promised her crew that she would find a way to restore power. She never broke her promises. Her assistant engineer, Kim Jae-sung, watched nervously as she worked with the dangerous electrical components. "Yoon, if you connect those wrong, the whole system could explode. Maybe we should wait for better equipment." "We don't have time to wait," she replied, carefully adjusting the power flow. "The captain needs communications, and I'm going to give them to him." The moment she completed the connection, lights flickered on throughout the ship for the first time in days. It wasn't much power, but it was enough to bring the communication system back online. "Captain, I've got communications back online," reported Communications Officer Oh Jung-mi from the Cargo Bay Command Center. Her voice carried excitement and relief as she tested the restored equipment. "The signal is weak, but it's working. I'm sending our distress signal on all frequencies, Captain." Lee Min-ho felt a surge of hope for the first time since the attack began. "Outstanding work, Jung-mi. Make sure that signal reaches Earth Command. They need to know what happened here." But Oh Jung-mi had been doing more than just trying to restore communications. During the long hours of the siege, she had been quietly listening to the Jektar transmissions, recording every conversation, and analyzing every signal pattern. "Captain, there's something else," she continued, pulling up her analysis on a portable computer screen. "I've been studying their communications since the attack began. I think I've found something important." In a corner of the cargo bay, linguist specialist Kung So-young had been working tirelessly to decode the alien language. She had no formal training in alien linguistics, but her background in human languages gave her insight into communication patterns that others missed. "Captain, I've identified patterns in their tactical communications," she announced, looking up from her makeshift workstation. "These aliens aren't as advanced as they want us to believe. They follow rigid protocols, like a computer program." Lee moved closer to examine her findings. "What do you mean by rigid protocols?" "They have set responses for every situation," Kang explained, pointing to translated text on her screen. "When they encounter resistance, they follow Procedure A. When they face weapons fire, they follow Procedure B. They never deviate from their programming." "Predictable behavior can be exploited," Lee mused, studying the data with growing interest. "If we know how they'll react to different situations, we can plan accordingly." Across the cargo bay, Science Officer Lim Jae-sung had been analyzing the technical specifications of the Jektar ships using the ship's damage sensors. His specialty was alien technology, and he had been looking for weaknesses in their enemies. Equipment. "Captain, I've found something," he called out, excitement evident in his voice. "Their ships have a critical vulnerability in their power coupling systems. The main power flows through a central hub that's protected by energy shields. But there's a small maintenance port that's only lightly defended." Lee walked over to examine Lim's findings. "How small is this port?" "About the size of a person," Lim replied, pulling up a technical diagram on his portable scanner. "If someone could get close enough to their ship, they could potentially overload the entire power grid from the inside." The implications of this discovery sent a ripple of excitement through the crew. For the first time since the attack, they had found a way to fight back effectively. "The question is, how do we get close enough?" asked Security Chief Kim Tae-ho, joining the discussion despite his broken arm. Their ships are heavily shielded, and they're not going to let us just walk up to them. Lee studied the tactical situation, his mind racing with possibilities. We don't need to walk up to them. We need to make them come to us. On the lead Jector ship, Commander Vexith was preparing for what he expected to be the final assault. His boarding parties had been repelled 3 times, but the human ship was clearly dying. Their life support was failing, their weapons were improvised, and their morale should have been broken. Prepare all boarding parties, he ordered his tactical officer. This time, we overwhelmed them with numbers. I want every available soldier ready for combat. What Vexith didn't realize was that his prey had been studying him just as carefully. As he had been studying them, humans had learned his patterns, discovered his weaknesses, and were preparing a surprise that would turn the entire battle upside down. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The plan was so crazy that it just might work. Captain Lee Min-ho stood in the damaged airlock of the Persistence, watching his crew prepare for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Around him, 12 volunteers checked their improvised spacesuits and makeshift weapons one final time. Remember, we only get one chance at this, Lee said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Once we're outside, there's no turning back. Security Chief Kim Tae-ho adjusted his broken arm in its makeshift sling, testing the grip on his improvised cutting tool. Captain, are you sure about this? We're talking about boarding enemy ships with nothing but mining equipment and determination. It's not about the equipment, Lee replied, sealing his helmet. It's about doing what they don't expect. They think we're trapped and helpless. Let's prove them wrong. The airlock door opened, and the small team of humans launched themselves into the void of space. They moved like silent ghosts between the wreckage of destroyed ships, using the debris field as cover while they approached the Jectar vessels. Breach teams, remember your training, Kim transmitted on the short-range radio as his squad reached the hull of the nearest alien ship. Adapt, improvise, overcome. We've done this 1,000 times in simulation, but this wasn't simulation. This was real space combat with improvised equipment against a technologically superior enemy. The humans used their mining lasers to cut through the Jectar hull, creating entry points where none should exist. Inside the alien ship, alarms began blaring as the crew realized they were being boarded. But the Jectar had never faced boarding parties before. Their military doctrine assumed that enemy ships would be destroyed from a distance, not invaded by desperate humans with nothing to lose. Intruders on Deck 7, reported a Jectar officer, his voice filled with confusion. How did they get inside our ship? The humans moved through the alien corridors like shadows. Using their knowledge of the ship's layout gained from captured technical data, they avoided the main passages, instead crawling through maintenance shafts and utility tunnels that the Jectar had never considered as potential invasion routes. Demolitions. Expert Shin Hai-jin had studied the alien power systems during the siege, learning how their energy cores functioned. Now she put that knowledge to deadly use, placing small charges in strategic locations throughout the ship. The beauty of their advanced technology, she whispered to her partner as they worked, is that it's all connected. Damage one system, and you can bring down the whole ship. Her improvised explosives weren't powerful enough to destroy the ship directly, but they didn't need to be. She was targeting the power coupling systems that Science Officer Lim had identified as vulnerable points back on the Persistence. Tactical Officer Bae Su-ben monitored the attack from her improvised command post. The cargo bay had been transformed into a makeshift bridge, with salvaged equipment providing a view of the battle outside. Captain, the first Jectar ship is losing power, she reported, watching the enemy vessel's lights flicker and die. Shields are down and they're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. How many ships are we hitting? Asked Communications Officer. Oh Youngmi, coordinating the radio transmissions between the boarding teams. 3 so far, Bae replied, her voice filled with amazement. Their own ships are fighting them. Every system we sabotage creates chain reactions throughout their fleet. On the lead Jector vessel, Commander Vexith stared at his tactical displays in complete disbelief. His advanced warships were being torn apart from the inside by primitive, Humans using improvised weapons and desperate tactics. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. They should be dead. Their ship is destroyed, their weapons are obsolete, and they have no military training for space combat. Sir, they're not fighting like any enemy we've encountered before, his officer replied, struggling to understand the tactical situation. They're using our own ship systems against us. Every time we try to stop them, they adapt and find a new way to cause damage. The humans had learned something that the Jektar had forgotten during their centuries of easy conquests. Desperation breeds innovation. When conventional weapons fail, you make new ones. When normal tactics don't work, you invent new approaches. Engineer Yundahai's voice crackled over the radio from inside an enemy ship. Captain, I'm in their engine room. These power cores are just like the ones we studied in the wreckage. Give me 5 minutes, and I can turn their own reactor into a bomb. Do it, Lee replied, fighting his way through an alien corridor with nothing but a welding torch and unbreakable determination. Show them what happens when they underestimate humanity. The Jektar had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that primitive technology meant primitive thinking. They had never considered that humans might be creative enough to turn their own advanced systems into weapons. As more alien ships fell to the unexpected counterattack, one thing became clear. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The battle in the Void Nebula had become the most watched event in the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, advanced civilizations monitored the impossible fight between the primitive humans and the mighty Jektar fleet. What they witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and survival. On the crystal world of Ethereal Prime, Watcher Zilthera floated in her observation chamber, her translucent form shimmering with excitement. Her species had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago, existing as pure energy beings who observed the galaxy with detached curiosity. Fascinating, she whispered to her fellow Watchers, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The humans are achieving victory through methods our combat simulations never predicted. They're not following any known military doctrine. Around her, other ethereal beings focus their attention on the battle, their energy forms pulsing with interest. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but they had never seen anything like this. Look at how they adapt, observed Watcher Cathellan, his form glowing brighter as he analyzed the human tactics. When their weapons fail, they create new ones. When their ship is destroyed, they turn it into a fortress. They refuse to accept defeat even when logic demands surrender. Meanwhile, on the mechanical world of Silicon Prime, UNIT 774, to process the incoming data streams with the cold efficiency of artificial intelligence, the silicon hegemony had replaced organic life with perfect machines centuries ago, believing that emotion and unpredictability were weaknesses to be eliminated. Their tactical unpredictability creates cascade failures in Jektar response protocols. Unit 7742 reported to the Hegemony Council, its metallic voice devoid of emotion. The aliens cannot adapt to human creativity because their military programming assumes logical behavior. Unit 7742 paused its analysis, processing millions of calculations in nanoseconds. Conclusion: human irrationality is paradoxically their greatest strength. They succeed precisely because they refuse to follow logical tactical doctrine. Back in the Void Nebula, Captain Lee Minho coordinated the incredible counterattack from what should have been his tomb. The Persistence was still dying around him, but somehow his crew had turned certain defeat into impossible victory. All teams maintained pressure. He transmitted to his boarding parties scattered across the enemy ships. We're going to make it home. Keep fighting, keep adapting, and don't let them regroup. His voice carried confidence that he didn't entirely feel. The battle was far from over, and they were still outnumbered and outgunned. But something had changed in the last hour. The humans had stopped being victims and started being predators. Throughout the battle, Medical Officer Choi Mina had been treating wounded crew members in the makeshift medical bay. But now she faced a new challenge: injured Jektar soldiers. who had been captured during the boarding actions. Medical teams treat all casualties, she announced over the communication system, her voice firm despite the protests from some crew members. We're not monsters. We'll help anyone who needs medical attention, regardless of species. The alien's breathing was shallow, and his unusual physiology made treatment difficult with their limited supplies. Mina, some of the crew are asking why we're helping our enemies, Song said quietly as she worked. They say we should let them die after what they've done to us, because that's what makes us human, Mina replied, adjusting the alien's position to help his breathing. We fight when we have to, but we don't kill when we don't have to. That's the difference between us and them. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched this moment with growing amazement. The Crystalline Confederacy, the Plasma Collectives, the Void Dwellers all observed the same incredible scene, humans showing mercy to enemies that tried to destroy them. On the water world of Aquatica, Elder Corthel spoke to his council. Through bioelectric communication, the humans are winning through methods we never considered. But more importantly, they're winning without losing their compassion. They could easily execute their prisoners, added Counselor Velsha, her gill slits fluttering with emotion. Instead, they risk their own lives to save them. I've been read up from behavior for a warrior species. The galactic observers had seen countless wars throughout the millennia. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, witnessed the birth and death of entire star systems. But they had never seen anything like this, a species that could be ruthlessly effective in battle. While maintaining their moral principles, the humans weren't just surviving against impossible odds. They were proving that strength didn't require cruelty, that victory didn't demand the abandonment of mercy. As the battle continued to unfold, it became clear that this small group of humans was teaching the entire galaxy a lesson about what it truly meant to be civilized. The first rescue. Ships appeared on the horizon like angels of salvation, their sleek hulls gleaming against the backdrop of the nebula. The Earth's Defense Force had received the Persistence's distress signal and rushed to the scene, expecting to find wreckage and bodies. Instead, they found something that would change their understanding of human nature forever. Admiral Park. Sung-Ho stood on the bridge of the rescue vessel Harmony, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. The readings showed multiple Jektar ships disabled or destroyed. While the human vessel, though badly damaged, was still operational, Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Persistence, reported his communications officer, her voice filled with amazement. Captain Lee is requesting medical assistance for both human and alien casualties. Both human and alien, Park repeated, trying to process what he was hearing. Are you telling me they actually won this battle? Across the galaxy? The Galactic? Council had gathered an emergency session to witness the final moments of what they had expected to be humanity's destruction. Instead, they found themselves trying to understand something that challenged their fundamental beliefs about warfare and survival. Counselor Vex, his crystalline form pulsing with confused energy, studied the battle reports with growing amazement. For centuries, he had believed that only the strongest species could survive in the harsh universe. The humans had proven him wrong. They don't survive because they're the strongest. He finally admitted to the assembled council, his voice carrying a note of wonder. They survive because they refuse to accept defeat. Even when logic demands surrender, they find ways to keep fighting. The other council members murmured in agreement, processing this revelation. The humans had faced impossible odds with primitive technology and somehow emerged victorious. But how? Their strength comes from something we overlooked, added Counselor Valinara, her tentacles writhing with excitement. They don't fight as individuals. They fight as a unified force, each member willing to sacrifice for the others. On the Persistence, Chief Engineer Yoon Dahai worked frantically to repair the life support systems, even though her body was ready to collapse from exhaustion. She had been working without rest for 4 days, surviving on determination and emergency stimulants. "Yoon, you need to rest," urged her assistant Kim Jae-soon, watching her sway on her feet. "The rescue ships are here. Someone else can handle the repairs." "Can't rest yet," she replied, her hands trembling as she connected another power coupling. "My crew needs me. These systems won't hold much longer, and we still have wounded people who need life support." Her dedication was typical of the entire crew. Despite being pushed beyond human limits, they continued working to save their shipmates and even their former enemies. Captain Lee Minho, his uniform torn and his face marked with cuts and burns, moved through the damaged corridors helping to evacuate the injured. His left shoulder was dislocated from the fighting, but he refused medical attention until everyone else was safe. "Captain, the medics say you need immediate treatment," insisted Security Chief Kim Tae-ho, supporting an injured Jekdar soldier. "Your shoulder needs proper medical care." "Everyone goes home," Lee replied firmly, helping to carry a wounded crew member toward the rescue ship. "That's a promise I made, and I'm going to keep it." In the improvised medical bay, Medical Officer Choi Minna worked tirelessly to treat casualties from both sides of the battle. Her supplies were nearly exhausted, but she refused to stop until every wounded person had received care. Commander Vexith, the proud Jekdar leader, lay on a makeshift stretcher with his leg badly injured from the fighting. He watched in confusion as the human doctor carefully cleaned his wounds and applied bandages with the same care she showed her own crew. "Why do you help us?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine puzzlement. "We came here to destroy you too. Take your people as slaves. Why show mercy to your enemies?" Choi looked up from her work, her tired eyes meeting his alien gaze. "Because that's what humans do," she replied simply. "We fight when we have to, but we don't let fighting make us monsters. Everyone deserves a chance to live." This simple statement carried profound meaning for the galactic observers. They had witnessed countless species that became cruel and ruthless in their pursuit of survival. The humans had remained compassionate even in their darkest hour. As the rescue operations continued, the universe began to understand something important about humanity. Their strength didn't come from superior technology or overwhelming force. It came from their refusal to abandon their principles, even when faced with extinction. The humans had won not just a battle, but something far more valuable: the respect of an entire galaxy. 6 months after the battle in the Void Nebula, the Galactic Council gathered once again in their massive chamber on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The arrogance and dismissive attitude toward humanity had been replaced by something that had never existed before: genuine respect. Ambassador Veltar of the Vorthok Empire stood before the assembled representatives, his tall frame no longer radiating the confidence it once had. The holographic displays around him showed detailed analysis of the Persistence battle, frame-by-frame breakdowns of human tactics that had baffled military experts across dozens of worlds. "We understand now," he announced to the silent chamber, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "Humans survive not through superior technology or overwhelming physical strength, but through something far more dangerous than anything we've encountered in our centuries of conquest." The assembled aliens leaned forward, waiting for his explanation. Some had traveled thousands of light years to attend this emergency session, drawn by reports of the impossible human victory. They simply refused to give up, Veltar continued, gesturing to the battle footage. When their ship was destroyed, they turned the wreckage into a fortress. When their weapons failed, they built new ones from mining equipment. When faced with certain death, they found ways to attack us. This isn't tactical brilliance, it's something deeper.
Counselor.
His crystalline form, dim with contemplation, added his own observations.
Owl.
Our analysis shows that human success comes from their collective psychology. They don't fight as individuals seeking personal survival. They fight as a unified organism, each part willing to sacrifice for the whole. The council chambers buzzed with quiet discussion as representatives processed this information. Military commanders who had conquered entire star systems found themselves reconsidering everything they thought they knew about warfare. The council's final decision was unprecedented in galactic history. New directives were issued regarding human colonies and exploration missions. The official document, transmitted to every major civilization, contained a warning that would have seemed ridiculous just months before. Never assume humans are defeated until confirmed dead on even. Then, prepare for them to prove you wrong. Back on Earth, Captain Lee Min-ho and his crew had returned as heroes, but they remained humble about their achievement. The debriefing sessions at Earth Command had lasted for weeks, with military analysts trying to understand how 30 humans with improvised weapons had defeated a superior alien force. "We didn't survive because we're special," Lee told the committee of admirals and scientists studying the battle. His arm was still in a sling from his injuries, but his voice carried the quiet confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and walked away. "We survive because we're human," he continued, looking around the room at the assembled experts. "And humans don't quit. That's not some mystical power or advanced technology. It's just who we are." Chief Engineer Yuen Dahai, still recovering from exhaustion and malnutrition, nodded in agreement. When everything seemed hopeless, we didn't waste time feeling sorry for ourselves. We looked for solutions. When one approach failed, we tried another. We kept adapting until something worked. The Persistence itself had been retired from active service and was now housed in the Space Warfare Museum on Luna. Millions of visitors came to see the battered ship that had changed galactic history. The hull still bore the scars of plasma, fire, and the makeshift repairs were left exactly as they had been during the battle. But the ship's legacy extended far beyond its physical presence. Across the galaxy, species that had never given humanity a second thought now studied human psychology and tactics. Military academies on dozens of worlds added courses on human unpredictability and adaptive combat doctrine. The Jektar Empire, once proud conquerors of 17 star systems, had suffered a complete collapse of military morale. Commander Vexith, now recovered from his injuries, had become an advocate for peaceful coexistence. He traveled throughout Jektar space, telling other commanders about the humans who had shown mercy to their defeated enemies. "They could have killed us all," he would tell anyone who would listen. "They had every right to execute us for what we tried to do. Instead, they saved our lives. That's not weakness. That's a strength we don't understand." The moment aliens realized why humans always survive had nothing to do with superior firepower, its advanced technology, or physical dominance. It was about something much more powerful and far more dangerous. The unbreakable human spirit that refused to accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds became. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't a laser or a missile. It was hope combined with the stubborn refusal to give up, even when logic demanded surrender. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who doesn't know when to quit.